This is Marc Lesnick and Mark Brooks at the iDate2011 Miami event. This is the post-conference discussion. We're going to talk basically about what happened at this conference. We'll discuss what happened at the event and what our impressions were. So, Mark, interesting event as always. We're always finding something new here. What were your takes on what came out of this?
You know what was different about this conference? Normally, the smaller conferences are more of a learning experience. They're more intense. But this conference was very intense, very active at the activity level, the number of questions, the quality of the questions that were coming out. I mean, everything was very similar to what we'd normally experience with a smaller conference. And yet we had, pushing 400 people here. So I think people got a lot out of it. I certainly got as much out of it as I would do out of one of the Shanghai conferences, for example. So all in, great learning experience, great networking, nice level of intensity all around. This is A1. I think this is A1.
Well, I mean, it's 8 years old now, so it's got its establishment. But yeah, I mean, the smaller conferences that we do, I mean, when you and I walk in those, we walk out of those going, I had no idea about these markets, and always we learned a tremendous amount. Like, for example, when we walked into the Asian conferences to learn about the Asian markets or the Japanese market, how closed that market was. Tokyo is crazy. Any of these markets we've walked into, we've always learned something. Moscow, you know, is going to be an eye-opener for both of us. But yeah, this large conference, of course, the participation levels are always strong. The thing, as far as the conferences itself, you know, this was, I would say, the happiest conference we ever had. We had parties where people were just happy the whole time, and it was like you wake up, you're at the conference, it's a happy environment. Then you go out and you go to a bar or whatever, and it's an extremely happy environment. So it was 3 days of solid happiness. But I mean, in terms of the business of the event, what was discussed there, I mean, some of the sessions that I attended were pretty interesting. Like, for example, we had Royal Caribbean. Like, Royal Caribbean was actually now, and with no offense, I mean, they're interested now in working with the dating market. They want to get, you know, these large corporations want to work with the dating industry, and we saw this in L.A., but we're seeing it now more in Miami, that they want to work with the dating industry to get more revenue because they're hurt, obviously, since September 2008, so they're opening their eyes up to other markets, and dating is one of them. That was one that seemed to be pretty interesting to me. Anything else seem interesting to you?
Well, just to go back to Royal Caribbean, I think we've got an opportunity through the conference to open the eyes of other industries towards the benefits, the opportunities of working with the internet dating industry. We've got people, I just think a lot of other industries aren't aware of how to work with us. So from that perspective, that's a great business development initiative for the industry as a whole. I mean, they should be advertising on dating sites. We should have more advertisers in general kicking down our doors. Internet dating, I think in some ways is something that just people don't understand. The Coca-Colas of this world don't need to be more educated on the industry and the dynamics of it. And this is a unique way for them to have insight on the industry. One of the takeaways I had from this conference on the final panel, it was a real eye-opener, was somebody proposed that we have some kind of gold seal, some kind of gold standard for the industry, and that, you know, there are certain rogue players in the industry, and it would be nice to be able to stand above the crowd in some way by having that differentiation, that distinguishing factor. So, and it seemed like, you know, I have wondered about this in the past. If it's
yeah, you and I have talked about this, and we looked at it, and this was 5 years ago we looked at it, and I guess the industry, we didn't think then was ready for it. Now, apparently, with the level of fraud increased, and obviously you saw we had a whole panel on fraud. There were 3 guys, including the State Attorney General's office of Virginia, saying, hey, we're not happy with what's going on. They weren't coming down hard on the dating industry. They were trying to say, hey, this is what we'd like you to do, but clearly there's an interest. And the other thing, actually, the thing that got me also was when I asked how well do you think you're going to do next year, and which companies thought that the industry overall was going to do better or worse financially. And everybody on the panel, it was a huge panel, raised their hands for it's going to do better, except 2 people who said it's going to do worse. And the 2 people who said that the industry is going to do worse financially in 2011 were Marcus Friend and Sam Yagan. And that was a surprise, and I wanted their opinions on it. And they just said, hey, paid dating is going to go, they're going to have to lower their prices. They're going to have to, in order to compete with free or whatever, compete with the increased competition in the industry, they're going to have to lower their prices and, as a result, achieve lower revenue. It doesn't mean they're going out of business. But that was a real eye-opener from my perspective.
definitely a split panel on that point. But ultimately, you know, people are paying more. The revenues are up from the companies that I have visibility on, and definitely the number of people visiting internet dating companies it set a new record this month. Actually, it was 27 million. Just got the numbers in from ComScore for December 2010. 27 million people visited dating sites in December 2010, according to ComScore. That's a record. That's as high as it's ever been, and higher by a couple of million. You know, year over year, significant growth. And Marc from Google had an interesting point. He said that the search volume for dating keywords in general is up 20% year over year. So that's about as fine an indication of growth as you can have. People are looking, people are visiting. Are they paying? Well, from all indications that we have, which is pretty minimal because there's not too many public companies, but from the indications we have, we've got good times to look forward to. We still have challenges, you know, and there's some good discussions about innovation in the industry, about mobile, about the growth of location-based services, you know, and for people looking into the industry wondering, is there opportunity? I think Grindr, for example, is a great case study and inspiration for people. And Grindr was started with $5,000. So, and he's actually managed to get traction and built a very solid business.
Not only that, but he's also a great guy. I mean, you know, sitting and talking to him, I was pretty, you know, just a very laid-back guy. He's not a very presumptuous individual. He's just very laid back.
Yeah, and there's a certain kind of person that comes to these conferences, I think, a certain kind of person that's interested in learning and sharing. That's the real goal of the conference. And what do you laugh in there?
We get our fair share of egos here too, pal. We get our fair share of egos at this conference, okay? We get plenty of Mark Zuckerberg wannabes, I can tell you that much for sure.
But ultimately, the goal is to learn and share for the people here, and you know, they show up. And what's the secret of success? Showing up. They're here. So
that's true.
You know, on the one hand, it used to be a few years ago that people didn't want to talk so much. They were concerned about sharing ideas that could, you know, to a competitor. But, you know, there's so many niches in the industry at this stage. You know, we're in a privileged position with Cortland Brooks, of course. We apparently work with competitors, but not really, because everybody's got their niche. They've got a different angle, a different approach, different target market. So,
yeah. I think. Did you attend my session, by the way?
I did.
You did. All right, so go ahead. What were your impressions on my session, free versus paid?
It was a nice, intelligent approach. I love that you quoted Dan Ariely. You quoted some great research and pulled out some good numbers. And we were competing. You did your own independent study. I gave you some numbers and info, and we were
someone's got to check up on Cortland Brooks to make sure. Someone's got to do some data checking around here. And if no one else wants to do it, then I'll do it. You know, but I'm not going to only going to do so much. I mean, I got things to do at night. You know. So we checked it, and we found out that you know, we were pretty close. Point is, like, the most revealing thing that I felt that was enlightening to me when I was preparing that presentation was the New York Times figures. I mean, what did you think of that?
I missed that part.
You missed the beginning with the New York Times?
Yeah.
Oh.
I came through a little later. So what was? Tell us. What was the New York Times? I need to see that.
You got to see the graph.
Yeah.
I have to show the graph.
Well, you come to dinner, so let me see that.
So you only saw half my presentation. That's what we found out.
Half your presentation. The half I saw was great.
Now, what about
I thought I'd let you
the ways that I said
good halfway through.
The ways that I said to defend against free.
Yeah.
In terms of how to methods to defend against free. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, that's what a good competitor does, right? I mean, ultimately, you find out their source of traffic and you take it.
But for the most part, the internet dating industry is not really doing that. Most of the players are not doing that. They're just kind of like in this zone, and they're marketing their way, and they're allowing the, you know, even though, let's say, another company comes in and it's more creative in its marketing path, it's you know, they're not responding to it quickly enough and adequately enough. They're waiting until that, let's say, for example, that company becomes a Zeus, can prove it that thing works, then they become reactive and say, okay, well, now we'll just advertise there, but then it's too late.
Well, we certainly saw that with Zeus, and we've certainly seen that with plenty of fish. I mean, the meteoric rise. And Badu, yes.
You keep going on. But
just this last
more
year.
Of these new guys coming in, and if you want to, you've got to keep your ear to the ground. You need to even hire a guy to keep his ear to the ground just to do this. And that's why we noticed that. That was my suggestion. That was one of my big suggestions. The other was sell your business and just get it over with.
Yeah. And I think actually the buyers and sellers gathering, that went quite well.
We've been doing that now since 2009, and we got a video that people sign up for it. We explain what it's all about. But the thing is, I mean, that session, man, that this time around, I was trying to introduce the session, and I was trying to explain the rules and everything, and these guys were like cars getting ready to go, and they just wanted to talk to each other. I'm like, guys, relax, you got to hear the rules first. And they were like, they want to start exchanging business cards and talking. I'm like, guys, hang out, just 2 seconds. And then finally, when it was like go, it was like, a horse race, out the gates they go, and they start racing, and it was incredible amounts of energy, and we'll show the video. Hopefully we'll show it here. We'll show some clips from the video. It was just amazing amounts of energy that these guys had. And there were about 50 people in the room, and slightly more sellers, maybe 3 more sellers than buyers. There were a couple of cases where a couple of sellers were sitting around for 3 or 4 minutes with nothing to do, but for the most part, almost everybody was able to meet everybody in that hour and a half. And I'm hoping deals get through, and that they met each other for the next these last 2 days and had a great time and got some deals. I'd love to hear that these things work. I know that they're meeting, they're talking, that's for sure. Anybody you met here, whoa, wow, that's interesting.
Well, I made the acquaintance of Badu, so I'm looking forward to getting to know them better and paying them a visit in London.
The VP was here. We tried to get the president here. But
what was different with this conference? There's a lot of new faces, a lot of new people in the industry.
Normally, in the last 8 years, the Miami event normally gets, I'd say, about 60 to 70% same old, same old. In other words, the big players always show up. This time it was, I'd say, 60% new faces. The same old, a lot of it's still there. Not saying it's bad, it's really good. But what was amazing about that was it, to me, told me that some of the companies that are old in the business, if they don't adapt quickly, that they're going to be out. And these guys, these fresh faces that I saw, these young kids, most of them were young kids for the most part, they're going to be sitting up there on that final panel in 3, 4 years, even 2, 3 years, because they're going to be big players. That's where I see it happening.
Yeah.
And that was really refreshing to see. And some of these guys had really, they're, as opposed to, let's say, the first iDate business conference where we had guys that really didn't understand the business model. These guys came walking in, understanding business models from day one. We had one guy who was a pilot full-time, and he was in your pre-session. See, he's sharp, man. He's sharp. He's as sharp as a tack.
It's time we had some fresh blood in the industry, ultimately, as well. Just seeing the room, I knew about 20, 30% of the people I recognized, and that's unusual. It's usually a little bit more than that, and a lot of new people, a lot of good ideas, too. I talked with a few of the new folks, and they weren't, they were starry-eyed, but they weren't green. They were looking for, to feel, they wanted to make sure that their ideas were possible. And I think going through the sessions, I'm sure they came away still starry-eyed and but a lot less, a lot better informed.
Anybody who's new comes to this conference, they certainly see a different experience than what they're used to, and so they realize, that they have to put the pedal to the metal as far as work is concerned. But like I said, there's lots of networking, a lot of learning as far as the meetings personally, but as far as the sessions are concerned, there's certainly a lot for them to learn. They're very appreciative of it. Almost every single one of me, especially for your session, they always walk up to me and say, dude, Mark shaved 6 months off of development from my company. I was going to take 6 months plus, maybe in some cases even a year, they were telling me, just for your session alone. And I'm glad it's structured the way it is, because your session gets those guys up to speed for the rest of the conference, because I can't have a basic conference that describes, the basics of online dating during the main session, because you won't have Match here, you won't have eHarmony here, you won't have the major players coming if it's about basics. You always had good comments from your session, but apparently you radically changed your session. I couldn't even be in on it while I was setting up.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I was setting up the event, so.
Well, it's a 3-hour session, and it covers it's the business of internet dating introduction. And we had 64 people through this time?
Yeah, something like that. It was 60-plus people, yeah.
All right. How did the matchmaker side go?
Matchmakers was also energetic. I noticed that. It was different this year than last year. Last year it was kind of just sit around and, hey, how you doing? And they talked some business, but it was pretty much more like get to know each other last time. This time it was, hey, this is how the business works. This is how you're going to grow. This is what you're going to do. Definitely look forward to seeing next year in Miami and Moscow and everywhere else.
Good. Likewise.
All right. Take care.